Hey guys, welcome back. This is Valerius Bellum here, discussing with you guys today some of the 3 basic situations you can tend to find yourself in a Milsim raid. So these are going to be essentially you breaking out of spawn trap, you putting someone else in spawn trap, and obviously, you know, the middle contested ground from the start of the game where you want to rush forward and try to hold. So today we're going to be using NATO unit symbols to discuss troop locations and movements, and I'll be showing little snippets of the positioning on the map in a first-person perspective. So here we have the 1st Infantry's perspective, as you see in the red circle there. And this is me actually in that position now. This is just showing you where we're going to put our 1st Infantry unit. This is going to obviously be a fire team element, which in the game is a squad size element. In the red circle now we have the 2nd unit, which is still infantry. And it's going to take us down to a first-person perspective. Their role really isn't any different than any other infantry unit. That's how all 4 of these are going to kind of be. They're all serving as an overwatching location to overlook Alpha, and you'll see the same thing here with this one. Again, another infantry unit surrounded in that red circle there. That's the one we're looking at here. Again, on top of the hill, looking down over Alpha for the most part, over towards Hotel. Just making sure that they can actually fight their way out of their position. That's what the intention of the infantry is when you're in spawn trap like we are now. To make sure that we have a position of elevation and altitude, as well as maintaining close proximity with the rest of our teammates, so that way we can get assistance if need be, and set up in a position to raid an objective. In this case, we're going to be raiding Alpha and or Bravo in order to try to get a foothold and get ourselves back in the game. You'll notice here we have a special operation force now highlighted. Now they do something a little bit different than the standard infantry. You're going to see that they are trained to do something really unique, which is probably why you're wondering why they're in the middle of the water right now, and that's because they are an infiltration specialty. That is their job. They're here to get us out of spawn trap. The guys on top of the mountain to hold Alpha and Bravo are to help get us out of spawn trap too by getting a physical presence, but these guys here, their job is to, you know, maneuver around the chaos that is the general battle and insert behind enemy lines, which is what you're seeing on screen now. So now on screen you'll see this different looking icon over here that isn't infantry. That is going to be an AA. So our AA's positioning over there is unique. It's for the most part by itself actually. Its job is to make sure that it can stay far enough away from enemy rockets, as well as providing air superiority, hopefully, so that way we can get air assets out. Here you see we have, this is going to be our LAV's location. That is a light armor with wheels. That's what that symbol means there. And this is an interesting spot for armor because there really just isn't a whole lot of good spots. It's a lot of congestion over here. Now I know these guys can obviously drive on water, but they're a big open target if they're on the water, not to mention they're super slow. You're going to see here we have a standard armor with them. They're going to be assisting and helping push up around this area. They have the bridge to the left over there, or I guess to their south on this photo. And that's where they're going to kind of more or less occupy, because it allows them to have some cover in front of them as well as a lot of mobility, which is very important. When you have a lot of armor assets in a very tight area, you need to stay mobile. It's super important. Here you have a UAV type drone. Now this is a rotary based UAV, unmanned. So this is going to be a role of our forward observer. Your forward observer is super important. Intel is almost always more important than a physical man. If you can get someone that can get you solid intel, that's super helpful. You'll see here that the MAV can fly around and check for thermal signatures, make sure there isn't any troop movements around in your area, to make sure that you're not being outflanked, that whatever your counterattack or counter push is, that they don't already anticipate it. Not to mention you have an additional option of using drones like the SWAV to laser identify vehicles that might be in hidden positions. So now we're moving on to our attack helicopter. It's a rotary wing, that's what that symbol means there, same as an unmanned drone. But something you'll notice that's also on the unmanned drone too is that dashed line around the outside edge. That means the positioning of this is kind of variable. It means that it's anticipated, but it isn't necessarily in that general location. That means it's going to hold that basic location for the most part, but it can move. It moves around. That's the whole point of that dashed line there on that unit icon, and that's the whole point of like air support in general. They're not going to just hold a fixed position. They become an easy target. It's just not a smart decision. Aviation assets are designed to move around and help the battlefield. Moving on to the fixed wings, here you'll see that they're set up over here in the bottom of the screen, but that doesn't mean that's where they're going to stay. They also have that dashed line, and they're going to be variable. Now obviously the point of aviation is to dominate the skies. We need these jets to make sure that the skies are clear. That's a lot of what the attack chopper is going to be doing too. We need air superiority, so that way we can make sure that our infantry and armor can move without being bombed. So moving on to the next formation setup now, you'll see that the map has changed and positioning has changed because now we have broken out a spawn trap. And one of the big things you might have noticed is that the SOF, Special Operations Forces, have now changed. They are now a rotary fixed location wing unit. That's what they're here to do now. They're now in a helicopter. So you're going to see that on screen, how this SOF team does something a little different than the last one did. The last one were exfiltration experts. These ones, their job is to serve as reserve force. So this is generally going to be your players that are, in the middle of the raid, they're getting a little burnt out. They need to take a break because their KD's starting to slip, and you need them to do something else that's still super critical, but they need a breather. So this is where you would want to put them. Moving on to your first infantry group over here. This is going to be a little bit more spread out, a little bit more role intensive with the infantry. They're not all doing the exact same thing like they were before. They're all still kind of looking in the same direction, but it's a little different. Over here would be a great spot for machine gun position. You have a big open area. Now, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of cover, so you just got to get used to that. You have to have good medics near you. Moving to the lower Gulf Village, which is where this next infantry group is located, they're going to have a little bit more cover, a lot of buildings, decent amount of trees, but for the most part, everything's destructible. So they also have to be pretty careful not to be too close to each other and not to rely too heavily on their cover. Now, remembering from your basic training, this is an appropriate fire position. You want to have cover and concealment on all sides, except for the area where you're looking, because it's the same size as your optical. It's a sniper's perch position. This other unit here is going to do the very similar thing. He's going to try to stay inside of a building if he can, make sure that what he's looking through is the same size as his optic. That way he can't be shot from anywhere that he can't see himself. That's very, very important to remember. You don't want to stay out in the open, and for the most part, if you have a building, there's not great cover outside. The most northern in this photo group over here, their job is to assist with the armor detachment that's up here. They're going to be laying mines on this road and making sure that we don't have any armor rolling down this road and trying to back cap us and or making a hard push on our position. We're trying to set up a defensive location. We need to find defenses and making sure we're dug in, and we're going to hold this ground until we can mount an assault of our own. So that's what their primary function to do. This is going to be an engineer heavy squad. Moving on, you have your AA. This is a piece of armor that's going to make sure our skies are clear. This is also super crucial. Their job is to make sure that we're not getting bombed on our heads. Same thing with what our aviation's doing. They're going to fix their position up here by this gazebo because they have this massive rock next to them that they can hide behind and take rocket shots from and still cover the air with a large view. I mean, that's a lot of view there. Now, another super crucial component, again, is your forward observers. You need intel. Intel is super important. That's what these MAVs and SWAVs are here to get for you. You can run more than one. We're just going to show you the locations of one right now. Scanning around, making sure he knows where troop movements are at, calling it out, so that way we can direct our mortar fire or shift the viewpoint of wherever the infantry located at the southern Gulf Village are focused. Same thing here with the SWAV, using that to mark the location of enemy vehicles that could be hidden, locking onto the positions of mortars, etc. Now moving on to the variable position of the attack chopper. This guy is still not going to be super crucial from an attack standpoint. Their job is still, again, to make sure the skies are clear. That's what we really need aviation to do. Make sure the skies are clear. Put some long-distance shots down on buildings and stuff to demolish, so that way infantry has the ability to shoot into areas where they can't normally access. And same thing here with the fixed aviation. Their job is to, again, make sure that the skies are clear. We need to make sure that people aren't getting bombed. Our infantry is going to be the tip of the spear. Aviation is here to make sure that they don't get blown up, and armor is there to make sure that we don't get pushed back from our current position that we're dug in on. So here's an overview of in the cockpit, looking down to see roughly where they're going to be operating from and roughly what they should be looking for. Bird's eye view is always nice. Moving on to the light armor here now, again back to the LAVs. They're fixed over here with the infantry here to assist them and make sure that we don't get pushed too far out of our current location. As well as they're going to have a primary and secondary position. Right now you're looking at the primary position. They have the ability to shell over at Delta and over at Foxtrot and Echo area. And then the secondary position over here, you're going to see that he has the same ability. Again, can shell Delta, shell Echo. He can't really assist at Foxtrot much, but he's here to make sure that the road doesn't get pushed and the infantry gets pushed back. He also serves a secondary role as to help with QRF. Now then we have the tanks position over here. These are some pretty cool positions outside of lock-on range, which are really nice, and they serve like big mobile artillery pieces. So So you're going to see here in the primary position, I have the ability to shell Delta, Echo, and Foxtrot. And this is incredible, the range on this thing. You can shoot with the 50 cal at pretty much any distance. You're outside of lock-on range, and you require guided rockets to have laser designation to assist and hit you, or using free launch rockets. Same thing here with the secondary position. This does not serve as a QRF, but serves the same function as the primary one to change out if need be. And then moving on to the final position where we're pushing the enemy team into spawn trap, we're going to move over here to the 1st Infantry Division, or I'm sorry, 1st Infantry Squad. They're up here on top of the mountain to make sure that we are not getting pushed by the enemy infiltrators like what our SOF team did for us to get out of spawn trap. They're over here to make sure that they don't do that to us. They don't come down from the hangar area and come down from up and over the backside of that dam right there. It's not a good thing. You don't want to get pushed out from over there. Moving on to the next infantry squad, you'll see they're set up in an area where they can help again with some counter sniping. They are not super. Their area of operation isn't super big. They've got a lot of pinned down location, but they're here to make sure that they can help with the people that would be trying to back cap us and to help counter snipe. On to the next infantry squad. Their job is to more or less make sure that the main force isn't coming out of spawn. They're going to be helping with the 2 armored divisions you see there. Set up here, they have the ability to look to as far left as they possibly can, make sure people aren't going down that side of the hill, as well as shooting rockets at any vehicles that would try to come out the front of this base. On to your last infantry squad you have, they're going to say kind of do the same thing as the last one we just went over. They're here to make sure that they can scan as far left as they need to and make sure no one's going down the side of the hill to cap Delta, as well as having the ability to shoot rockets over at the main gate. On to your eye in the sky, the most beautiful little thing in the world. This forward observer drone is always super important. Allows you to know where the vehicles are moving, helps with making sure that you aren't having people infiltrating behind you like this bird's eye over the dam. As well as you can use it to call in mortar strikes, assess what assets they still have to see if they're combining forces for a push. And you have that SWAV, the UAS Raven, that has the ability to help with mortar callouts. This is the primary thing you're going to use for mortar targeting. We have a forward observer mortar training that's super in-depth about that I might post a video about, but right now I'm not going to get into that because I don't have time. But that's something that our forward observer is going to do. Moving on to your variable position rotary attack chopper. He is again going to serve in the role of making sure the skies are clear. He's going to do some long-range attack damage, make sure that if we do have a really bad vehicle push out of spawn, that where we have like all our tanks or all of our LAVs down, that they're getting repairs, that he has the ability to help repel that attack. Or if we're getting a really bad infantry push, he has the ability to shoot some rockets in the spawn area. But mainly his job is again just to make sure the skies are clear. And now moving on to AA, another person whose job is to make sure the skies are clear. He's going to have a sitting location back essentially where our infantry just was at the Lower Gulf Village, because here you have a beautiful view of everything on the map. You can see all the way up to the spawn point of where all the aviation assets come from, the Chinese spawn. Super critical spot to be in. You have decent cover with these buildings here, as well as mobility. Moving on to your fixed wing variable location aviation assets. These guys are pretty much not any different than where they were at before, because they can't get too close to the spawn because they'll get hit by the base AA or the mobile AA that sits in spawn. There's just too many air threats. They don't want to get too close, but they're going to make some eyes in the sky passes, some diving runs on occasion, and might occasionally help out with infantry. But for the most part, their job is to make sure our skies are clear. On to your LAV. Their job is to make sure that armor isn't making a push out of spawn. They're going to be set up mainly by the front gate and kind of serve as more of a spearhead role, unlike usual where the infantry is serving as a spearhead role. They're going to kind of be more of a bullet sponge. They have the ability to shell anyone that could be putting down our infantry over there, as well as helping out with the snipers up there, and then having your second group of LAVs, because now you'll have 3 instead of 2, to help over here by shelling the front gate and having a rotating fire position. As you see, there goes the other LAV to go take his firing roll before the next one comes back in to go do damage. And then your armor, your tanks, you still only have 2 of these. So as you progress through different phase lines, you get more of the LAVs, but for the tanks, you're still only stuck with 2. Their job is to kind of stay on more of this MSR, this main road right here, because the fact that tanks just don't handle the rocks as well as LAVs. Now their treads and stuff are way nicer for tight corner maneuverability, but They need to have that wide girth that is provided by the MSR compared to the dirt roads. You can also move them over here to assist on this dam position. This isn't in the graphic before, but it's really nice to have.